Some years back, in a deep village of Masaka, there lived a man named Benson and his wife Martha. They were known as a peaceful couple, the kind you would point at and admire from a distance. Benson was hardworking, and Martha was gentle, quiet, respectful, and always smiling. Everyone thought their home was blessed. After their wedding, it didn't take long for Martha to conceive. The whole village celebrated with them. Benson walked around proudly, telling anyone who cared to listen that he would soon become a father. But everything changed the day their first child arrived. The baby boy was born with albinism. Benson's face darkened instantly. The excitement drained out of him like water from a broken pot. Right there in the hospital, he refused to pay the bills. He blamed Martha, shouted that she had embarrassed him, and stormed out, leaving her crying weakly on the bed. Days passed before he finally returned home, and that was only after family members begged him, comforted him, and convinced him that a child is a blessing no matter how they come. People hoped he would eventually accept his son fully. But then Martha became pregnant again. And once more, the baby, this time a girl, was born with albinism. That was the moment Benson snapped completely. He told anyone who asked that he felt childless. That having children he could not proudly show in public was no different from having none at all. He grew distant from his wife, refused to touch the children, and avoided community meetings because he believed people mocked him. He kept repeating, "There is no albinism in my family. My siblings have children, none are like this. The problem is not from me." Little by little, Benson's shame turned into resentment. He began treating Martha like a burden instead of a partner. As her health weakened because of her high blood pressure, he became even colder. Then the story took a twist that shook the entire village. Instead of seeking medical explanations, instead of trying to understand what genetics meant, Benson started an affair with their young housemaid, Lydia. At first it was rumor, whispered by neighbors. Then suddenly Benson announced publicly that Lydia was carrying his baby, a normal baby, he said with pride. Before the dust could settle, he paid Lydia's bride price. His mother supported him, saying they had waited too long to see a child who looked like the family. What's painful is that Benson still claims he loves Martha and doesn't want to hurt her because of her health condition. Yet he has already emotionally abandoned her and their children. "I have watched Martha through all this. She still prepares his meals, still kneels to greet him, still kisses her children lovingly, not knowing that her husband is preparing to replace her. Sometimes she smiles at Benson, unaware that he has already chosen another path, but life has its own way of exposing the truth." Months later, when Lydia finally gave birth, the entire village gathered to see the normal child Benson had been boasting about. But the moment the midwife stepped out holding the babies, a heavy silence swept through the compound. Lydia had given birth to twin boys with albinism. The shock on Benson's face could have cracked stone. His mother staggered backward, holding her head. The same people who once mocked Martha now whispered among themselves, wondering how such a thing could come from two different women. Lydia, trembling with exhaustion and anger, said clearly, "There is no albinism in my family. None. So this can only be from you, Benson. It cannot come from two women." Her words hit Benson like a hammer. For the first time, he began to question everything. Confused and desperate, Benson traveled deep into his ancestral village to speak with his elderly grandfather. He wanted to know if there had ever been any trace of albinism in their bloodline. The old man listened quietly, then sighed deeply and said, "Yes, my son. Long ago, your great-grandparents had a daughter born with albinism. She died as a baby, so the story faded. But it happened. It is in our blood." Benson froze. It felt as if the ground under him had opened. All the shame, all the hatred, all the rejection he poured on Martha and his children, all of it stood before him like a mountain of guilt. He returned home shattered, realizing he had wronged the very people who loved him. He summoned all the courage left in him and decided to bring back his family, to apologize, to accept his children, to start again. But when he reached Martha's home, he found a different reality. Martha had moved on. She had remarried a wealthy, respectable man who treated her with honor and kindness. And although Martha had given birth to a normal baby in her new marriage, she still lived with her 2 albino children, children who were loved deeply by their new father and treated like royalty. As for Lydia, she had no intention of staying with a man who blamed others for his own bloodline. She gathered her twin boys and moved to another village, far away from Benson's drama. Benson was left alone in a house filled with regrets, empty rooms, and silent walls that reminded him of all the mistakes he never thought he could make. He tried to marry again, but every family refused him. No one wanted to risk joining a bloodline with a history of albinism, and word spread fast. Soon, Benson became a symbol of his own lesson, a man who destroyed his home because he refused to accept the children God gave him. And in the end, the entire village talked about him not with respect, but with pity. The lesson: treat people the way you want to be treated. Do not reject others for things beyond their control. And above all, remember that we are all created by one God, and none of us chooses how we come into this world.